back to another episode of Student of the Game. Today I'm joined by my friend Jamie Miller, Gold Key Home Inspections. Welcome, Jamie.
Thanks. Great to be here.
So you're venturing off into becoming a new podcaster here. We'll talk about that here in a little bit, but right now, Jamie, you are a home inspector, and not just a home inspector. You have Gold Key Home Inspections, where you do home inspections in northern Indiana, southern Michigan, and parts of Ohio. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's
Awesome.
right.
So
Multi-state.
multi-state, I love it. I love it. So if you're listening right now, here's what you're thinking. You're thinking that, oh, Jamie's got it all figured out. He's in multi-states, and I want to be a home inspector. I want to be a business owner, and it's just easy, isn't it, Jamie?
Oh yeah. It's wow. I could write a book on the failures, on the lessons learned, on the struggles. But I think that toughens you and makes you stay in the game.
Absolutely. Well, before you write that book, let's just give the people, some cliff notes of this book, and let's go back a little bit. So, you attended Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. You lived there for a couple years. You taught elementary and middle school. What schools were those at?
Those were, the first 3 years I was at an elementary school, R.S. Payne Elementary in downtown Lynchburg, where I was exposed to a culture and a way of life diametrically opposed to what I grew up in
Okay.
in Midwest Indiana. And then I switched to middle school, which was a little more to my liking. I got to coach a basketball team during that time, which was really the only good part about teaching. I
Oh,
always said there were certain parts about teaching I loved, mainly the summers off and holidays. So, it got to a point I had to find something else. I wasn't enjoying it. I did that for 6 years total, and it was just it was time for a change.
well, I know that that's given you some, experiential knowledge in teaching, because now you teach people about the condition of a home, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. But shout out to my friends Carl Miller in Lynchburg, Virginia, runs a great real estate business in Lynchburg, and Thomas Nolan in Appomattox, just down the road. So I've got some friends over in that area,
Wow,
and
I didn't know
Liberty.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
absolutely. And Liberty University, the Liberty Flames. My daughter was thinking about, maybe looking into there, but they don't have a women's golf team. So if you're at Liberty listening to this, I think you need to start a women's golf team. So,
We were actually
uh,
in Lynchburg this weekend. My daughter graduated out there, and
oh,
so we were out
congratulations.
there this past weekend. So, yep, just got back.
Well, let's get into, um, let's give the people something that they want to hear, because I believe that there's clues. Everything in life has clues. I never got into real estate looking at how are realtors doing their business. I got into real estate thinking to myself, how does a doctor run their practice? How does an accountant run their practice? How does somebody who's selling t-shirts grow their business? I looked at clues from other people in other industries, and that's really kind of gotten us to where we are today. And so I think success leaves clues. Student of the game is all about staying curious. Student of the game is all about, what can we learn from other people? And as well as I do, I mean, we're both sports guys. We like basketball, but I hate to say this, there's more lessons in losing than there is winning. Winning is great. Everybody wants to win, but most of the lessons are in the adversities and the challenges. And so my goal is bringing guests on here that have a story, that have success, that have built a business, but are willing to talk about what it took to get here. So when it comes to, being a home inspector, just talk a little bit about your journey. Started in 2001. So what is that? 23 years, 22, 23, 24 years in the business?
Absolutely. My first company was called First Choice Home Inspections, and I started that. I got laid off. I moved back to Indiana, and I worked at a factory, and I didn't know anything about who a home inspector was, what they did, even that it existed. We bought a house, and a home inspector showed up. I think the real estate agent, ordered it, and so I didn't know at that point what I wanted to do with my life, and so I just started following this guy around, and it kind of looked kind of fun. And that tripped the trigger right there. And so, long story short, I got laid off from my job in an RV factory in, after the Twin Towers fell in
Mm,
2001 and that winter. And so I called the guy, and he came to my house and trained me on how to be a home inspector a couple nights a week. He was out of South Bend. He was one of my potential competitors, but he trained me on that. And then in the meantime, I had got another job in a construction firm because he had to make some money. And we had three small kids at that time, maybe two at that time, two or three. And anyways, he trained me on that, but he didn't teach me the end of it. how to grow a business, which was kind of
Mm.
smart on his part because he would have had a competitor.
Mhm.
But, and so I couldn't keep it going. I couldn't get it going. I did a handful of inspections and so forth, but I kind of put that on the back burner, focused on, you know, supplying my family with what they needed, getting a job, focusing on that. And so I built a house in '04 and I went back to the factory, but I just could not get this bug of wanting to be a home inspector out. It was just there. And so I just tried to give it another shot. And so I went back. By then, you needed to be licensed in Indiana. And the first time you didn't. In '04, you had to. And so I went and I took all the training courses again, the licensing classes, went through all that again, and started out working in a factory from 5 to 1:30 in the afternoon. And then I would do marketing or business growth or inspections in the afternoon from, you know, 2 o'clock to whenever. And so I did that for 5 years, believe it or not. And so in about 2009, we had come through a downturn in '07,
Mhm.
'08. That didn't necessarily affect me. I was still part-time anyhow, but we were actually growing during those years, but not a ton. And so I remember the night. I had particularly low point in life for some other reasons, and the business wasn't building like I wanted to do this full time. I wanted this to be all I did, and I just couldn't get it there. And so I kept getting these emails from a guy that was focused on growing home inspection companies. He was based in Dallas, Texas, and he offered a free phone call on how to remake your business card, how to remake your brochure. And I was like, well, they're free. What do I got to lose? And so I learned a ton on those calls. And then he offered you had to join his company to get weekly coaching. I believe it was something like 2.99 a month. And when you don't have any money, that's a lot. And you
Yeah.
can't envision that. But I was at a point where I didn't have a choice. It's either you're going to quit or you're going to go all in. And so I remember, this might date it. I faxed in my application just before the deadline one July evening. And through his coaching, through that process of learning and so forth, 3 months later, I was able to quit my job at the factory and jump full time into home inspecting. And that was in
Okay, so
October of
I'm gonna
2009.
I need to stop right here because one of the reasons that I've started this podcast, I haven't told a lot of people this, but one of the reasons I started this podcast and I'm passionate about it is because I've been coached all my life. I believe in coaching. I believe if you want to reach your full potential, you need somebody who can speak truth and life into you. And what you said, Jamie, was actually priceless. I've told my kids this story a lot about a lot of different numbers, but it's not like $299 was a lot of money. It's just all I had at the time. It's like it wasn't that much. It's just all I had. And what you did is like you bet on yourself. And we just did a recent episode with Kelly on our team, Kelly Worth, and the title was betting on yourself, and that's what you just did. What was that conversation like with Donna when you're like, "Hey, I'm going to join this coaching program, and we don't have the money, but I kind of want to make more of it, so I feel like this is a good investment." And she's like, "Well, who is this character, this snake oil salesman that's magically going to grow our business," right? What was that conversation like?
Yeah, she was the biggest supporter of me during this whole time. Yeah, she really was. We were homeschooling our kids at that point, all three of them. I think in '09, the youngest one would have probably been 7, maybe 6 or 7. But no, she supported me. She said, "Whatever you think is right, go for it." And I got her to thank for multiple things in life, but definitely that. She was never nagging on me like, you're not going to make it. Why don't you give up?" No, never anything like that. And so I sent it in to a company called the Millionaire Inspector Community, which has a great ring to it.
Yeah, it
But
does.
like you said, it could have sounded a little snake oilish uh, to the outsider. But what I had heard was made a big difference immediately. And so it basically was a network of home inspectors throughout
Hmm.
the country. And we met 3 or 4 times a year and we just masterminded. And it's not your competitors, it's people from other states. And all they are is there to help you, which blew my mind. I had never been exposed to something like that before. And so, I mean, the energy boost you get from something like that. I used to make a joke that I would go to these meetings feeling sorry for myself, and I'd come out of the meeting feeling sorry for my competitors. because of what
Oh,
was about to hit them.
oh,
That
that's
that might not
good.
that might sound a little too cocky, but really it did give you that boost, that energy you needed, and not just that, practical. You had ideas,
Yeah.
you had strategies to succeed.
Well, and then we talked
So,
about that a lot. Like, there's strategies and tactics, that help get you to where you're going. And I tell my kids, thinking, decisions, and results. You can talk to kids this way, you can talk to your business people this way, but literally thinking, decisions, results. If you want to reverse engineer it, you just look at what result do I want. It's never about the results, but what result do I want? And then you have to say, okay, what decisions do I need to make to get those results? And then the first step is to bring it all the way back to the thinking level. What do I need to think about in order to make these decisions that get me the results I'm looking for? And I think where a lot of people get stuck, Jamie, is at that thinking level. I only know what's been modeled for me growing up, right? My household, my parents, your grandparents, whoever raised you, that's kind of like they call it your formative years for a reason. They built you into a certain type of person to think a certain way, to act a certain way. What you're saying is what you were thinking about at this point in time, you needed a new fresh perspective. And I love, like, we're kind of going away from, your home inspection business here for a second. We're talking to everybody. We become the sum of the 5 people we hang out with the most. And a lot of it has to do with, our thought life. What are we thinking about? And I love that you said that, because it's not I don't find it arrogant when you say, I felt bad for my competitors, because what you're saying is you got some new ideas, you got some fresh perspective. Your thinking was going to change some of your decisions, and your decisions are going to change some of your results. And at the end of the day, you're going back to betting on yourself. Talk a little bit about, I love it, by the way. So thank you for sharing that. I believe in the power of the mastermind. I have friends all over the country, realtor friends all over the country, that are some of my best friends today. And it's because we just share ideas, we share best practices. And outside of like the positivity and the sharing, it's actually somebody that I can vent to. It's somebody that if I'm having a tough day, I can go to them and say, hey, listen, I'm dealing with this. What do you think? And just get some fresh perspective. I'm assuming that does this group still exist for you today?
yes, in one form or another, it's changed hands and it's called something different, but those friendships I made that first year were they're still my best friends, and
Wow.
I have friends probably in, I don't know, 10, 15 different states that I can call at any time, and just what you mentioned, vent to, get ideas from, "Hey, I have a problem with this employee, uh, blah, blah, blah. What do you suggest if you had this before?" And so forth. So it's yeah, it's just a community of friends and people that are dedicated just to helping one another, and what more can you ask for as a business owner?
That's awesome. Yeah, in this podcast, I mean, if you've heard this podcast before, or whether it's your first time, the thesis of this podcast and what we believe is relationships win. And we say this a lot: relationships that benefit me win, but relationships that don't benefit me win. It's not a quid pro quo. It's not like only the relationships that benefit me win. No, if you believe in human interaction, if you believe in connecting with other people, there may be an inspector that you never get a deal from. There may be a realtor for me in another country, in another state, in another country, that I'm never going to get a referral from. I don't benefit financially, but what I benefit is they change my thinking. They shift my perspective, and that's what you're talking about. There's power in the mastermind. I'll encourage anybody right now. Like, I went back and I started to talk about this podcast came about because I've been coached all my life, whether it's through sports or through business. I believe everybody needs a coach. This podcast was birthed because not many people have experienced that relationship of a coach. And so I want to be the virtual coach. I want to be the online coach to these small business owners. And Jamie, through your story, we're going to help a lot of people today. Let's get into mastering the fundamentals. So you run a home inspection business that's very successful, and it's successful now, but you talked about, from 2001 to when you started to 2004 when you're part time to now it's the recession. And here you are, like, you're going all in, not having any money, and you're building it. Was it just pure, like, straight line success, or were there bumps along the road, or what happened after you kind of went all in on this club?
Yeah, I think straight line success is everybody's fantasy, but
Yeah.
not reality. And so no, it's more like, I can't draw anything right now, but it's like backwards, up, down,
Yeah.
sideways, backwards, forward. But the aspect of coaching I think that helped me the best was expanding my mind.
Mm.
and let me see things from a different perspective and how other people saw them, and seeing how other people grew their businesses. And I knew how to, the phrase kept coming up early on that I didn't believe it at first, but you are your own worst enemy. You're getting in your way of being successful. And when you grind day after day for years before you hire, like we finally hired somebody in 2012. And before then, I was doing almost 600 inspections a year by myself, which I thought at the time was my goal. But when you're working about 14 hours a day, that gets old pretty quick. And
Yeah.
so we started hiring, and that's a whole different level of business growth. But it's just that coaching is always there, and it gives you perspective on anything, and you just realize you want to have a culture and a team that reflects you. And so there's a lot of stops and starts with that. And
You're
so
we're gonna get into some of the fundamentals and the behind the scenes, but I wanna talk about one quick story. Offline, you'd kind of shared with me that in 2018, there was a little bit of a rough patch for your business. Do you mind sharing a little bit about like what happened and kind of what your mindset was like? You know, because 2018, right? Like you've actually come a long way in this mastermind in this group, and now you have people coming alongside of you where things should get better. But then what happened in 2018?
yeah, great question. By 18, we had grown so fast. I think we had eight or nine inspectors at that point, and which was, you know, way beyond my wildest dreams. And so, problem is we didn't have the systems in place to support that framework for very long, and including hiring, who you hire, the processes for hiring somebody. And so we had a former friend of mine who quit. He took another job, and then we had some disagreements on the way out, and he sent a letter to all my inspectors, basically bashing our entire company and trying to sow the seeds of rebellion. And it wasn't just that, that was one of the pieces, but I had just made some bad hires. And so between 2018 and April of 2019, we lost 6 of my 8 inspectors. And so we had, I mean, and this was right before busy season, April, market's heating up, you're
Hmm.
ready to just, make your money during those months. And I was down to 2 guys plus me. And I hadn't even been in the field for a while. So it was 2 guys that stuck it out plus me. And I remember the call that afternoon when my Sunday afternoon when my inspector manager put in his 2 weeks notice to go do something else. And I just got down on it together. I couldn't hardly breathe. So I was like, I don't know where this is going. I don't know when it ends, because it had just been one hit after another for probably 6, 7, 8 months. And we just got on our knees and just prayed. Said, "Look, we had given this business to God a long time ago. You know exactly what's happening, and we're putting it in your hands." And so at the time, it felt like the worst thing that ever happened, but when I look back now, it's the best thing that ever happened. That needed to happen so we could improve everything we did. We could focus on improving everything. Our interviews went from 1 interview to 4 or 5 before I'm gonna hire somebody. I'm gonna get to know them before I'm just gonna, if you hire out of desperation, you're gonna make mistakes, and that's what I did multiple times. So
Speed dating can work, but the odds are not in your favor, right?
yeah. So that year, 2019, we had 4 people. It was 4 or 5 that just, we didn't know them. We weren't even putting out ads. They just came to us, and we still have 3 of those inspectors on our team from that year. And so
Wow.
that summer, I was training 4 guys at one time. Which, if you know anything about training home inspectors, it's a 4 to 6 month process, and I was doing 4 at a time plus inspecting and running the business. So yeah, I'll never forget that year. But that was a needed wake up call for our company.
What advice would you give leaders that are trying to hire people? Because I believe, and I've talked about this on other episodes, like I believe leadership is more of a circle, right? It's a cycle, and I think a lot of leaders they try to abdicate, and it's like, you want to grow a team, you got business coming in, you want to bring on more inspectors, and you want to tell them what to do and teach them one time, and then leadership's done, and that's what I think a
Yep.
lot of people think, right? It's like, hey, okay, I taught you, go do. And
Yep.
leadership is a constant cycle where you're constantly teaching and training. What would you tell leaders, or what advice would you have leaders give to leaders who want to grow a team?
I think it's just that one, be patient in who you're hiring. You can get a good employee or a candidate. You think, oh man, this guy's great. He sounds good. He's smart. He's got some experience. Why don't you meet his wife?
Yeah,
See how they interact. See how we joke about it, and then I learned this in my coaching group. But you don't want to marry crazy, or you don't want to hire crazy, and you don't want to have someone you hire that's married to crazy because you want them to have that support in their family. So one, I would say be slow in who you hire. Number two, your point, you nailed it about abdicating leadership. That was the one another mistake I made is okay, I got this guy now. I'm training him. Okay, you're off on your own. And that works for about 2 weeks, but you've got to stay on it. You've got to constantly be training. You've got to constantly be uh, uh, pouring into those people's lives and finding out where they're at, what they're thinking, and just communicate and stay in touch. And that's how it becomes a family. It doesn't just they're just not a quote. I don't like using the term employee. It's is a team, and
it
that's
absolutely is.
really what we're focused on.
Well, and at Knoll Team Real Estate, when we went out on our own, I mean, I thought long and hard about what do we call ourselves? Is it Fort Wayne Real Estate? Is it, Summit City, whatever, whatever? Like, what's our name? And I couldn't get past Knoll Team Real Estate, and because we have a unique business model. We are a team. More than one person, is involved in every transaction. Every single transaction we're doing, it's a team approach. And so I couldn't get rid of that, and because I believe in that, and winning together is a core value of ours. And we'll get to some core values here in a little bit, but I could talk for days with you on leadership because, show me a leader that, hasn't had any challenges and you're not really leading anything. My daughter, asked me, she has a business class in high school, and she goes, Dad, we were talking about the difference between leaders and managers. And she's like, my teacher told me this and I disagreed. What do you think? And I said, well, I'm not going to disagree with your teacher. I said, but I can give you my own perspective. I think managers manage a process and leaders lead people. So there's people involved in leadership. There's processes and systems involved in management. And I think the people that get it wrong are the ones that try to manage people and try to lead processes. If you think of any good boss you've had in your life, they've led you. Any bad boss you've had, they've managed you. You hear the term micromanage. Nobody wants to be micromanaged. I don't think anybody wants to be managed at all. They want to be led. It's like I have some gifts and abilities, lead me to use those, lead me to help provide those gifts to this team, to the organization. When it comes, we're going to transition, but mastering the fundamentals, you've got some core values, and I'll go through these here a little bit, and if there's a different fundamental to home inspecting or to Gold Key, let me know. But you have passionate professional, continually learning, servant attitude, friendly enthusiasm, and elite work ethic. Are those the fundamentals to your business and to what Gold Key stands for?
Yeah, they really are. We went through a business growth coaching a few years back, a little bit different than what I've talked about previously. And we really, at that point, we didn't have a mission statement. We didn't have core values. I mean, we were kind of doing them, but
Hmm.
it wasn't on paper. The team members didn't know about them, and so our leadership team created them. And I really think it does go to it. And the third one might be the most important: servant attitude. You've got to have that. You know what it's like in the real estate world. You know that you don't have everybody clicking all the time. Clients can be unpredictable or tough to deal with. And it's easy to be nice to somebody that's nice to you. It's easy to be nice to that home buyer who gives you a 5-star review. What about that one that calls up and complains 4 times after the inspection, and all of them are stupid, complaints, but what's your attitude in that moment? And you have to hire people that are gonna have that attitude too, because they're gonna get on an inspection and they're gonna have difficult circumstances that are gonna make them wish they weren't even there. But they've got to have that attitude that it's not about me, it's about you. And so
Hmm.
that servant attitude, and then you got to be passionate. Part of passion is not just being fired up and excited or putting on a show for it, but what do you do in your spare time? And I'm speaking with my team members. What do you do in your spare time to better yourself? Are you reading forums or online magazine articles or whatever on inspecting, learning every day? If you're not, you're not being passionate about your profession, and you're going to burn out pretty quickly. So yeah, those are definitely some of the core principles that have kept us going. And if we found that team members that we hire that don't have that, they just don't last. You have to
Mm.
like the number one thing I hire now is, do you like people? Not just, oh, yeah, I like people. Do you love people? Do you enjoy being with them? Do you enjoy answering questions? Do you enjoy uh, prickly personalities? You know, nobody really enjoys that, but do you have enough natural love that you can deal with that and be professional in light of that? So
Well,
that's
and
really the number one characteristic.
we always tell our team, we deal with people usually at their most stressed, not at their best. Nobody
Yep.
comes to us that's completely stress free that says, I've got this life situation going on. I'm getting divorced and everything's going to be great. Or, my spouse passed away, or I'm now empty nesting and I've got to relearn to love my spouse again because the kids are out of the house. Or I just got a new job and we need a bigger house. Or I just got a new job and, or we just had a baby and we need a bigger house. Those are the reasons people move. So we always say that there's two stresses when people move. It's the reason for the move and it's the actual move themselves. I don't I don't know. Maybe the appraisal, maybe the negotiations, but I don't know if there's a more nerve-wracking time for a homeowner than inspection day. Talk to me a little bit about I want to talk actually specifically about I'm a buyer and you're doing the home inspection and the inspector goes through, you and your team go through the entire home, and now it gets to the walkthrough or the summary page. Talk to me about how you've perfected getting to that place where you're now educating the new home buyer on the condition of their home. How does that look?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's cues. One thing we train our guys on is body language. And if that client is with us for any length of time and sees some of the things ahead of the end, so to speak, what's their body language? Are they going out for a cigarette? Are they shifty? Well, they're nervous. All right. So we need to recognize that. And so when it comes to the wrap up, uh, first of all, you have to do a good job of setting expectations. What's your number one of our core values is friendly enthusiasm. Kind of the impression I think sometimes of inspectors is that this is big mean guy that's going to tell them, all their questions are stupid and they shouldn't ask them. Nothing could be further from the truth with us. We're there for your questions. And so when we go to a wrap up, we're going to set expectations. Here's what we're inspecting. Here's what we're not inspecting. We're not there for cosmetic items or to be nitpicky. We're here to find things that would devalue the property or be costly to fix or dangerous to your health. And in light of that, here's some things I'm finding. Here's some maintenance tips. Here's something you need to look at down the road. Here's maybe a serious issue. We got a crack in the basement wall and there's signs that water have come in there. There's no water today, but it's the middle of July and it hasn't rained for a month. So we want to make sure this is taken care of so you're not dealing with it down the road. And so I think a couple of things. One, you got to have a personality that's going to relate well with people. So you're putting them at ease. You're joking around, maybe lighthearted with them a little bit, and you're just setting their expectations. And then I think what I call putting a bow on it. I got to put a bow on this house for them. I'm not My role, and I got to be careful with it, is not to sell them the house, but also I can use my 20 years of experience to say, you know what? You got a new furnace, you got a new air conditioner, your roof's been put on probably within the last 5 years. Uh, you've got, you know, a joist that's cracked in the basement and maybe some mice in the attic or something. You know what? This is a pretty darn good house. You got a few little things to keep up with here or to take care of, but I feel very comfortable in this house, or very, very comfortable having my son or daughter buy this house. And
I think
so,
I think I
I,
think one of the most important sorry to interrupt, but I think one of the most important parts of the home inspection is the delivery of that because we talk about this is like your bedside manner. If you guys are doctors, this is your bedside manner. How good is the inspector at being able to read the room, know which one's the nervous one, know which one needs reassurance, knows which one actually needs to stick up for him too. Because I agree, your job is not to sell the home, and your job is not to tear the home apart. Your job is to provide enough information that the realtor and the buyer can make a decision on what they want to do moving forward. And I would just say, I think you guys are best in the business in this. You're world class at it. I mean, Kevin specifically, and yourself, and a lot of your other guys, but you two are the ones we have the most. You guys have do such a good job. You educate us. You don't make it feel like this is a mountain that we have to overcome, and that reassurance of like, hey, you're here today. I'm here today. to find and pick out the things that need attention. What I'm not here today is to compare this to another home because, we've showed, the average buyer right now looks at about 10 to 12 homes and they picked this one. There's a reason they picked this one. 10, 11 are dogs and they picked this one, right? And so the
Yeah.
goal is not to say, "Hey, it's such a bad home, you need to find something else." It's to say, "Hey, if you really love this home, here's what you need to know about it." How important is it to have a good partnership with the realtor as you go into this? Maybe it's like the realtor can give you a heads up. Hey, this person is a little more detailed. This person, might need a hug. How important is it to have that relationship with the realtors heading into it?
Oh, I think it's crucial. We find probably if there's an issue later or, after the inspection, about 80% of the time it's because the real estate agent has not properly prepared their client. They don't know what they're getting into. And, you know, a great relationship, like, you might call and say, "Hey, we got this certain person that needs this. Can we have this inspector who I think would match up with them pretty well?" And that happens sometimes. We would love to think that everybody give an equally great performance, but like for example, Kevin is very, he just relates well to. He can read the room very quickly and can relate well to about everybody. And so when somebody wants to request him instead of me, that's awesome. Please do that. Uh, but I think that's the agent has such a big impact on it because they're setting the stage for what's going to happen at the inspection. And they can tell, "Hey, look, there's going to be some things that come up that you don't know now. That's why you're hiring the guy. So you know that ahead of time and he can give you peace of mind about, hey, these are things that can be fixed or, you know, you got to make the decision from here."
Well, in this podcast, like we talked about, the thesis is relationships win, and I think in every business, there's business partners, there's vendors. If I'm printing T-shirts, I'm buying T-shirts from a distributor, from a manufacturer. I'm buying the stickers, the stitching that goes on, a vest. There's everybody's connected, and you, Jamie, you're an extension of the service we want to provide when it comes to, and I've asked people in the real estate industry this question: who do you look at as your customer? Is it the realtor as your customer, or is it the buyer who's paying for the inspection your customer?
Right. And that's, we I'll probably get the terms mixed up a little bit, but it's both,
Mhm.
The buyer ultimately is our client, but real estate agents are, essentially our customers. We have to we 90% of our business comes from real estate agent referrals,
Mm,
so that at least. And so that's a big part of it. And we have to maintain those relationships just as well as the client that's buying the house. And, while still balancing that line of, impartiality, which
sure.
is what they're paying us for.
Um, let's go into, if people didn't know what a home inspector has to do every single day, falling in love with practice. Like, this is the stuff that we talk about all the time. When somebody calls and wants to be, in real estate, there's a few things that I talk to them about. There's a few things that I would do during the course of my day if they wanted to shadow me, to make sure that they saw real life. Like, this is not TV real estate, right?
Right.
This is not HGTV. This is real life real estate, and I'll have them go through some things. What are some behind the scenes things that have happened to you, or what are some behind the scenes thing you would educate people on, owning an inspection company?
On owning a company,
Yeah. Or
as
doing the
opposed
inspection.
to
Yeah,
or
yeah,
doing an
yeah,
inspection. Well, as far as the inspection first, it's just you have to be willing to go into places that most people wouldn't. Certainly it's a safety issue. If you don't think something's safe, don't do it. But I was on one yesterday with one of our guys, and he was in a 2-foot crawl space with a dirt floor and cobwebs. You couldn't see further than about 6 feet because how thick the cobwebs were. And so, are you willing to belly crawl, army crawl through cobwebs, and do a professional job of evaluating the plumbing, the electrical, the foundation, the structure, the main beam? All of that comes in. You might be down there 45 minutes,
Oh
and
my
that's the
goodness.
bulk of the inspection. And that's after you got out of the attic that was 112 degrees because he had poor ventilation up there, and sidestepping piles of bat poop and whatnot. So there's certainly an emotional part of it. There's a skill part of it, but some of it's just, are you tough enough physically to do that day after day after day and not get ground down with it? So um, that's what I would say when a potential inspector comes our way, we have them go on a ride along for a day just to see what they could potentially get into. And that's not every day. That's
Mhm.
extremes. I don't want to make you think it's that way all the time, but the interaction with people seems to surprise people. They think, "Oh, I'm just going to be an inspector. I'll check out this home. I've been a contractor for so many years. I know what I'm looking at." But that's such a small part of it. It's more about the people and interacting with that. And then as far as a business owner and what it takes to do that, wow. Um, Sometimes I look back and I can't believe we're at where we're at, but then I think of all the stops and starts we've had and the help we've had, and you mentioned the podcast we're gonna be starting, and that's why I wanted to do it. I wanna help others because I've received so much help, but as far as a business owner, you've got to hire the right people that see it, have the core values that you have and are willing to live up to that day after day, because an inspector's on his own a lot. You can't see what they're doing. Do they have the integrity to do what's needed even when nobody's watching? And
Alright, so
so
you're a business where you're doing the inspection, the buyers haven't showed up yet, the sellers are probably not there. Give us some stories. What's some funny things that you ever fallen through, like the drywall? You ever run into anybody? What are some funny things that have happened at an inspection?
I have not personally done that. We've had a guy stick his foot through their ceiling one time. We wear body cams, and so that records some fun stuff now and then. I've had one of my guys, the same guy actually. He got attacked by two cats on an inspection one time. They just came after him and started clawing and biting him, and he had to usher him outside. Miraculously, the entire body cam footage picked up the whole episode and no bad language, which I thought was even more impressive.
You
But
get you guys would have, like, an amazing TikTok channel or something, or Instagram where, like, all these
yeah,
crazy things that would happen.
we're working on that. So he did that. We had to send him to the urgent care to get because it drew blood and everything. And the same guy later that year ran into a squatter that was hiding in a bathroom after he had already been on the inspection. I don't know, maybe an hour, and all of a sudden somebody moved when he was walking nearby and about scared him to death. And so one reason I love home inspecting is because it's always different. There's always
Absolutely.
something different. I wanted a job where it wasn't going to an office every day or have the same thing, and that's definitely different. And so that's a fun part of the job.
That's cool.
But
Um, we've covered a lot of ground here, and you've talked a lot about the specifics of your business and inspections. One thing that actually I'm gonna save this for the end. Well, I'll come back to this, but you mentioned something earlier about Donna and a supportive spouse. There was a couple books written by Thomas Stanley, the Millionaire Mind and the Millionaire Next Door, and they said one of the key indicators of success is to have a supportive spouse. So it does not surprise me one bit that Gold Key is having the success that it does because of the queen, Donna Miller, who's really running the business. Jamie, we know what's happening there. But as we get into kind of wrapping up the podcast, we talked about the fundamentals. We talked about what drives, Gold Key home inspections. We talked about falling in love with practice, like all the behind the scene things, what it takes to have, that balance between, truth and honesty and empathy. Right. And, somebody's buying a home and it's a big deal and you don't want to talk them out of it, but you got to be honest with them, and if you kill too many home inspections, the realtors aren't going to give you any more to do. But you still have to be honest because you owe that to the person paying, which is the consumer. So you've got to figure out how to deliver that bedside manner really well. And falling in love with practice is you're a technician, you're an inspector, but you're also growing a business. You're also running a business. So you got to hire right. I love how you talked about, being slow to hire the right people. We do the same thing. If someone wants to join our team, you're going to see anywhere from 3 to 5 interviews, and not everybody gets to work here, and that's okay. But when we get through all of this, my main question is, what does winning at the game of life look like for Jamie and Donna and for Gold Key? What does really winning at the game of life look like for you guys?
well, I think that number one, when you have kids, is to be a good father
Hmm.
and wife, or a mother, I should say. And that was number one. And I got to credit my wife even more for that. As I was building this business and working another job, I was also coaching high school basketball. I wasn't home a ton, and she never complained, and she was just a solid rock. And so winning in life in the family is first. You can have a multi-million dollar business, and if your family is flailing, I consider that a failure. And so that's number one. Number two, within the business is these are not just your team members anymore, they're family. I want to know what's going on in their family. I want to help them. We frequently have reviews where we say, "Okay, what's your 5 year plan? How can we help you get there?" And so I think winning for me in business is just developing the relationships on our team so they trust us and we completely rely on them and we can help their family have a great income, move forward. Some team members don't want to move forward. They don't want to do extras or whatever, and that's fine. How can you be the best you can be at what you're doing?
Mm,
How can we help support you to lead your family? We need men to stand up in this culture. How
mhm,
can my inspectors lead their families or their kids?
mhm,
And that's what we want to provide support for. One thing we do that's a little outside the norm is we have biweekly training meetings, 7 o'clock in the morning at our office. Most of our inspectors live an hour or so away from our office. That's not an easy day. They could still do 2 inspections. That's a long day, but we bond. We talk about strategies. Sometimes it's more about interpersonal problems someone's having. And so to me, that's rewarding that we can help
mm.
people with that as we go down the road.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, if you're a realtor listening and there's a lot of good inspection companies. There's a lot of good inspectors in our area. You guys have done a great job of building a team and our values align. It's something that I saw very early on. It's a reason I'm a big fan of what you guys do. So I appreciate you being on today. As we wrap up, the kids say, "Give this man his flowers. Give this woman her flowers. Give them their flowers," which just means encouragement, accolades, appreciation, because we believe relationships win. Jamie, who's somebody you want to send some virtual flowers to today? Who's a relationship in your life that has helped you get to where you are?
Well, I think I got to start with my wife. I mean, she quit homeschooling and became the call screener, the marketer, the QuickBook implementer. Everything that needed to be implemented, she would do. She's has a tireless work ethic. I'm a little more laid back and shy, and she's opposite of that. And it works great together. And so, she's actually stepped away from the business a little bit in the last year, and that was both our choices. She was just, I mean, she's grounded out for 15 years, and that's a lot of work. And the kids are out of the house, and so it's time. She's has so many talents and abilities that she's pursuing some of those right now. And then, second, I would have to say that my business coach that I first met, his name was Mike Crow, and he was the founder of that organization. And not so much personally what he did to me, but the organization he created, the friends I was able to meet through that. That
Mhm.
changed my life. It did. I was a floundering, didn't know what I wanted to do, to running a multi-inspector firm that I would have never in my wildest dreams when I first started believed was possible. And so I think those two really they account for a great deal of success we've had.
I just want to connect some dots here for a second. You run a massively successful home inspection company. You and your wife are examples in our community. Um, and if we took it back to 2009 or whenever that was, you had to bet on yourself for $299, and to see what that did for you, for your family, for your relationships, to see that now you are sending flowers to a man that you probably don't know super well, but has created something like he's created an affinity group for you to be a part of, that has given you all these resources of time, energy, and effort, and these relationships, that have just stood the test of time. And if you're struggling right now, if like you don't know like what the next thing to do is, my encouragement, because we believe relationships win, is become a part of a community. Be a part of some positive community, whether it's through your church, through your kids' sporting events, whether it's through networking events. There's women groups, there's men's groups, there's whatever, golf courses. Find something, find a club, find something that you can resonate with other people, and go do life together, because in community is where we really grow. And Jamie, that's what you're saying. You're saying that you can pinpoint back to a time when your wife believed in you. She didn't question you. You spent the money you didn't have to bet on yourself. And now everything you have today is because of those things. I love it. I love that relationships win. I love our relationship. I love that I can call you, pick up the phone if we have a challenge, and you and I talk through some things, and just try to figure out a solution that continues to build relationships, even if no is the answer. A lot of times I tell our clients, even if you get the answer no, I'm still going to fight for you. I'm still going to help you as much as we can. As we wrap up, thank you for sharing, by the way. Thank you for sending some flowers out today. But as we wrap up, how can listeners help you out? Like, what can listeners do to help you out right now?
Well, I think that the thing that keeps us going is just the ability to get out and help homeowners.
Mhm.
You know, not just if you're buying a house, but what are you doing in your house to maintain it? Can we help you with some kind of advice or connect you with a vendor that can give you what you need? I would say, certainly calling us and order home inspections is the number one thing that drives us, or a mold test or radon or whatever. But it's more than anything, it's just being aware of the fact that your house needs constant care. Are you doing the things that you need to make that happen? And so we can, even if it's just a phone call, we can help you with. We'd be glad to do that. We're not here to just, "Well, only if you're buying something are we going to help you." We're so many people have helped us, and that's what we're in the business of doing.
I love it. I'll give you a shout out real quick. So, Lindsay and I have lived in our home, I think 16, 17 years or something like that. And I think we're on our fourth or fifth home inspection. I mean, you guys keep coming back every couple years because, that's the thing that happens, right? There's like the boiling frog that, your maintenance and your condition of your home are going to continue to deteriorate. Yeah, it's called a depreciation, and so you got to stay on top of these things. And what you guys do and what you guys find are in so many areas that I don't even go in my house. And so I'll just give you a shout out real quick. If anybody's living in their home and they're not planning on moving, call Gold Key and get a home inspection. Figure out what you need to do. I mean, this is like adulting 101. Figure out what areas you need to keep your home in great shape so that when we come in and you do need to sell it, when you do go through a lifestyle change and need to move, now your home's in great shape and now we can negotiate a great deal for you. If we find all these things out at the time of the negotiations, it's going to be expensive. I can guarantee that. So give Jamie and his
Yeah.
team a call. Jamie, thank you for being on the podcast today. How can the listeners follow you? Do you guys have an Instagram page or something that they can go and get some tips on home inspections?
Yeah, at goldkeyinspect.com is our website. All our social media you can link to off of there. But yeah, we have Facebook, Instagram.
Awesome.
That
I
might be
can't.
it. I'm not sure what else. When you're 53, you're not in with all the hippest, latest stuff, but I got a team that does.
Well,
So
I
yeah,
wanna go find that cat video. I wanna find the squatter video. That's some good content, but, I can't thank you enough for your relationship, with me. I can't thank you enough for what you do for our team and for our community. So thank you for being a guest on Student of the Game today, and I think the listeners heard this. I think the listeners heard that, you had a passion to get into this business. You had a bunch of setbacks. There's still gonna be more
yeah,
setbacks, but
yep.
through building a community, through engaging in relationships with other people, you've persevered all of these things, which I have to imagine has given you confidence to pretty much tackle about anything right now.
It really does. I was thinking that as you were saying that, is that when you go through disappointments and struggles, it strengthens you for the future, and you can be confident in what you've done in the past. It's faith.
Mm.
It's going to work out because you've been able to work it out this far.
I uh,
So,
I think somebody once said, "Never grow weary in doing good," and I think that sums you up. So thanks so much for being on today. This has been another episode. If you could do us a favor, if you like these shows, leave us a review, share it with a friend, and send me a DM, send me a direct message if you know somebody who's a student of the game, who's been through some things and who's learned and who's overcome and who's having some success. I would love to interview them. So thank you again, Jamie. This has been a great episode, and that's a wrap.